Hello, hello. Super excited to have you all with me again for another career strategy session. Today, we are talking about negotiating and the best practices to create a win-win environment. I'm super excited to have you all, as I mentioned earlier. My name is Jacqueline Twillie. I am a millennial career advisor, and what I specialize in is helping women negotiate when they get job offers and at performance review time. So that's a little bit different for everybody when they want to engage in the process of coming to a coach to help coach them through the negotiation process to get more of what they want. In 2016, women earn 79 cents on a dollar compared to a white non-Hispanic male. That is absolutely nuts. When we dig deeper state by state and we break it down by race, it gets even worse. I mean, some states are paying women 52 cents on a dollar compared to their white male counterparts. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, and I'm on a mission to eliminate the gender wage gap. So I'm bringing you this workshop today for free. The webinar is designed to help you gain the skills and tools that you need so that you can negotiate to earn what you're worth and that you have the confidence to have those conversations. There was a study done in 2015 by Label League, and one of the things that they learned is that most women do not negotiate because they are afraid. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to engage in that process. And beyond that, one of the things that really startles me when I learned this research, but it really shouldn't startle me that much because I didn't know this when I negotiated my first job offer. Back up. I didn't negotiate my first job offer. Most women don't negotiate their first offer because they don't know that they can. So I want to let you know before we get into today's webinar that you absolutely can negotiate your salary. There is a way to do that so that you are more successful and so that you don't avoid backlash or get into a situation where the offer is no longer on the table because you approached that conversation in an inappropriate way. So I'm going to give you some tips and tools, best practices, so that you can negotiate and earn what you're worth. So beyond that, let me give you a few housekeeping tips. If you want to ask a question and you're watching this live, tweet me. My Twitter handle is right here on the screen. It's JV_Twillie. All right. You can also shoot me an email. My email address is on my website. The website is jacquelinetwillie.com. You have my name right there. So let's go over the format for today. I'm going to give you some things to avoid, and then we're going to move into some of the things that you should do. Together, not doing the things that will create friction and resistance points and drive division, and you implement the things that will create more of a value creation, giving a win-win for both parties. When you combine everything that we talk about today, you're going to have a really good foundation for understanding how to approach any type of negotiation, but especially negotiations regarding your salary and total compensation package. All right? So first thing I want you to know is that it is not okay to lie. I know it seems like a basic thing, but it's really important. I don't want you to think that in order for you to get what you want, you have to lie. So let's put that out on the table. Lying doesn't get anyone anywhere. There's ways that you can have a conversation without sharing information that will give the other side the upper hand on you without you being dishonest. So always be honest, be mindful of what you share. One tool that I like to remind people to do is don't overshare. If you find yourself just going on and on and on and on and on, you're talking a whole lot, then you want to pause. You want to ask some thought-provoking questions so that the other side can engage in the conversation and so that you can learn just as much from them as they're learning from you as you share. So don't overshare. Now, I just mentioned asking questions. When you ask a question, don't ask questions that can be answered with a simple yes or no. That's called a closed-ended question. You want to ask questions that are open-ended, questions that cannot be answered with a yes or no, so that you can get more information about the situation that you're discussing. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're in the middle of talking to a recruiter about a position. You've been talking a lot. You realize, oh my goodness, I've probably been talking for 3 minutes nonstop. It's time for me to slow down a bit, get the other side to engage. So you've been talking to this person. If you're at the point where you're negotiating a salary, you have some type of relationship with them because you've gone through an interview process and now you're at the offer phase. Let me take a step back. Don't initiate salary negotiations until you have an offer, okay? All right, now fast forward back to where we were. You have this relationship with the HR person. You realize you've been talking a lot. How do you turn the ball around and ask a question so that you can learn more information? You can ask a question that says, from my understanding, in this position, I'll be expected to deliver X, Y, Z results. Now, with that, are there any additional things that we didn't discuss that will be expected of me? This is a good place to reset. You want to pause. And when you're having this conversation, it's okay to pause and to catch your breath a little bit. You don't have to speed talk everything. And we're going to talk about your tone and pitch of voice in just a few minutes. So put it on them for them to say either yes or no, and then follow up with a why or some type of question where you can get them to expand a little bit. So anytime you find yourself in a negotiation where you're talking a lot, you want to take a step back, pause, put the ball in their court, let them start talking so that you can learn more information from them. All right. Now, the next thing that I want you to keep in mind, things to avoid when you're negotiating. When you get an offer, it's really important to remember that it's rare that the very first offer is going to be the best offer, okay? Most people expect that you will negotiate. So there's probably some wiggle room in that first offer range. Let's take it a step back. Before you get to the point where you're talking about a dollar amount, a lot of times when you fill out an application for a position online, there's a box that says, what are your salary expectations? One of the things that you should do with that is in your salary expectations, do your research beforehand so that you know, based on the position that you're applying for, the average salary range, and be honest with yourself. Know your skills, know the things that you bring to the table, your past successes in a similar role, even if it's transferable skills. In addition to that, you want to be honest with yourself. Let's say you look at the job description and you have 6 of the 10 and you still apply for the position, then you know there's some gaps. So in terms of putting in a range on that online application, you want to make sure that you're fitting in the range that's average for that industry and in your city. Now, you can check out one of the earlier videos to give you the tools that you need to check out what you can expect for a salary in your city for the title that you're looking for. So once you get to that point where you have that first offer, you know that there's going to be some wiggle room because you've done your research. What I'd like you to keep in mind as well, these are things to avoid, is you want to know based on what people say and not just what's online. So talk to people. What I mean by that is talk to people in the industry. Talk to people in your network and ask them, hey, I'm considering applying for a position as, and you throw out the title. Do you know what type of salary range I should be expecting? I was thinking X or Y, and you throw out a number. When you talk to people, that's going to be your best form of research because people will know in the industry, people talk and they know what other people make. When you look online, you're dealing with a pure average, and you could have people who are going online who are on the lower end of the range who are filling out information versus people who are on the top end of the range. So then that average is a little bit skewed. So you always want to, if possible, talk to people in the industry in that geographic area to find out the range that you could expect. What I would caution you against is don't go up to someone and say, hey, Sally, how much do you make? Because I'm applying for this job and I want to make sure I'm getting paid what I'm worth. Just a few minutes ago, I told you that even in 2016, women on average are earning 79 cents on a dollar compared to their male counterpart. So with that being said, if you go to your girlfriend to speak with her about how much she's making, it's a very good chance that she isn't earning what she's worth either. So talk to your male counterparts because we know for a fact that they earn more than women. Now, I want you to think about more than just salary. Salary is really important, but there's more to negotiating than just getting a pure dollar amount. With that, you want to look at the total compensation. So total compensation is going to be things like your health insurance, your telecommute. The reason why telecommute is really important is because it will save you a lot of dollars when it comes down to traveling, wear and tear in your car, sitting in traffic, and things like that. So other things that you can consider, we had a whole episode, so you can check out one of the previous videos to find out the things that you can negotiate for beyond salary, but you definitely want to check those things out and make sure that you're negotiating based on the total compensation package. Now, women tend to negotiate in an indirect way versus men who go in and they negotiate very directly. They'll say flat out, hey, I'm looking for this. Women, what they typically do is they kind of tiptoe around it. They'll talk about this and they'll talk about that, but they won't actually come out and say, you know, this offer that you gave me, it's about $10,000 less than what I was expecting. So be comfortable saying that, but you don't want to be combative. There's been a lot of research that shows the backlash that women experience when they negotiate. And that's because they try to go in, they've seen their male counterparts negotiate. So they try to go in and use that same style that the guy used, and it doesn't work for them. And there's a reason why it doesn't work. And that's because there are societal norms and societal expectations that women and men should behave in XYZ ways. So be aware of that and never go in putting your fist on the table like, hey, I want this money right now or I'm out of the door. Don't go in with that ultimatum type of attitude. But you do want to be direct enough so that they're not guessing or you're skirting around it so much that they don't even know what you're getting at, because you want to increase your chances of getting what you want. Now, practice saying it out loud. Sometimes it is uncomfortable, especially when you begin negotiating, to just come out and say, I'm expecting this salary amount, but you sent me an offer with this dollar amount. It's about $15,000 off from where I thought we would be at this point. Now, if you're not used to saying that, your voice might shrink a little bit. Your tone might go down. Your pitch might go up. You might sound unsure of yourself and not confident. And it's extremely important that you are confident when you're having this conversation. So if you get that email offer, a written offer, and you look at it and it's not right, don't just react out of pure emotion and start freaking out and pick up the phone and, oh, it's way too low, and I'll take it, because you're going to cave. Look yourself in the mirror. This is going to be difficult, and it's weird for some people, but look yourself in the mirror, look yourself in the eyes, and have that conversation where you're role playing and practicing letting those numbers roll off of your tongue and saying it and getting that out of your mouth. That will help ease your nerves and help you when you have that conversation to sound more confident and sure of yourself, because when you understand the value that you're delivering to the organization and you're able to articulate that confidently and say, hey, you know, I'm super excited about taking this position. I am more than confident in my ability to hit XYZ objectives based on our discussion in the interview process, but I really need to be compensated along the lines of what other professionals are compensated for in this market industry, in this market rate, I'm sorry, not industry. So just be really clear on that and be confident. Now, I want you to make sure that you keep in the back of your mind that negotiation isn't a battle. Especially when it comes to your career, you're building a long-term relationship. So these relationships are going to be developed over years. You're just at the beginning phase of it, so you want to start off with a good impression. Now, negotiating isn't rude. Some people think, well, I should just accept what they offer me and be polite. No. You want to make sure that you're exercising your leadership ability, and a good characteristic of a leader that is effective and successful is that they're vocal and they can make decisions and they can speak up on different issues. Your salary is very important, so exercise your leadership ability. Don't think of it as it's being rude if I counter offer. Think of it as, if I go to bat for myself, I am showing the company that I will also go to bat for them. There's some really interesting research, and I learned this from Margaret Neal. She is a professor at Stanford University. She says that when women negotiate and they represent someone else, they get more than if a man negotiated them. Now, when men represent themselves in a negotiation, they get more than if a woman negotiated for herself. So what does that mean? That means that women are actually great negotiators when they negotiate for someone else. So you have to take that same confidence and that same communal attitude of I'm going to win this for this person, I'm going to get this for that person, and apply that to your own situation. That same confidence and courage that you have when you speak on behalf of others, use that and channel that for yourself. Now, I want you to realize that you're bringing significant value to the organization. I mentioned earlier that you do not want to start negotiating until you have an offer. Once you have that offer, you know that they want you because you are bringing significant value to the organization. Now, depending on your position, that's going to be really different from person to person, but understand with that, you have a lot to offer. And because you're bringing a significant value to the organization, they want to meet you halfway and they want to make sure that you come to the table with realistic expectations. I mentioned earlier that you want to do research. When you do the research and you're looking at what are people earning in this market area, based on my type of experience, can I expect to earn somewhere around the same wage? You also want to have these conversations where you're looking at the work experience that other people bring. Are they being paid based on their work experience, or is it other factors? Just try to get as much information as you can up front so that you know what you're going into the conversation for. So when you have the conversation based on your value, you know how you stack up to other people who do a similar job, either within that company or in the city within the same industry. All right, so let's move on to talk about some of the things that I want you to make sure that you implement each time you engage in a negotiation. I mentioned earlier talking to professionals in your network. So a good place to start is people in a professional association. For example, if you're in the marketing industry, talk to other people who are in the American Marketing Association. If you're an accountant or a CPA, talk to other people who are in the associations for CPAs and accountants. All right, that's a good place to start because those are people who work in your industry. Now, I want you to also keep in mind that framing matters. What does framing mean? Framing is a term basically says, this is the way I'm asking the question. This is the way I'm putting out there the things that I want. This makes a huge difference. The way that you frame the ask, and the ask is whatever you're asking for. We're going to talk about packaging next week and the next segment of the negotiation series. But when you make that ask, you want to make sure that you're going in and you're framing it in a way where it's not combative and you're creating a win-win for both parties. Now, I mentioned earlier, you don't want to go in pounding your fist on the table saying, hey, I want this money right now, give it to me or I'm out of here. That's not an effective strategy for most people. However, what is an effective strategy is saying, you know, I got another offer from a company and you don't have to name the company, but I really want to stay here. Or if you're engaged in an active interview process, you know, you make me an offer first. I got this other offer. I want to work here. However, I'm just trying to make sense out of this. Long term, I have great career opportunity here. These are the reasons why I want to work for the company. These are the reasons why I'm going to add value. Don't just say these are the reasons. Actually list out the reasons. Be very specific in that point and say, can you help me? Is there anything we can do where we can get to a middle ground here? The reason why you want to emphasize what you're going to do, the expectations that you're going to exceed for this company, the reason why that is so very important is because you don't want them to think that you're not loyal, that you'll jump ship easily. So by re-emphasizing the reason why you want to work for that company, the things that you will do when you work for them, you let them know that you're committed to this, but there is another offer and you want to make sure that, you know, you're taking the best deal and you want to find out if there's anything that they can do. Again, it's not rude when you counteroffer. It's exercising your leadership ability. And if you frame it in a way where you're saying, how can we come to some type of agreement where I have an added incentive here. All right, does that make sense? I see I have a few questions here coming through Twitter. Just want to remind you all that if you have a question on Twitter, you can pop your question to JV Twillie. I'm going to be answering these questions in just a few minutes. So there's a couple of things that I want to cover. Framing. When you frame it, I want you also to be aware of the sweet girl syndrome. I don't want you to get into a point where women, you're saying, oh, I just want to be polite and nice, and I'll just be the sweet girl. So I'm going to play the, oh, will you please give me this? And playing into that role of like a damsel type of role. I want you to be strong and confident and assertive, but also be polite. You're building a long-term relationship. So again, avoid being combative. Another way that you frame the conversation is it's sometimes a mental thing. So women are communal. I mentioned a few minutes ago how when women negotiate on behalf of other people, they get more of what they want for their party that they're representing. So take that own approach internally with yourself. If I get these things, my family will be better off and my team will be better off. The organization will be better off if I'm compensated fairly. So if you have that internal mental approach, that will also help you frame the conversation where you're discussing how is this a win-win for you? How is this going to benefit the team? How is it going to benefit the organization? How is it going to benefit me as well in my home life and the people that are closest to me? Body language. This is huge. So before we hop into body language, I do want to make sure that I emphasize that you should never negotiate over text. So many things can go the wrong way if you're negotiating over text. My preference for you is to negotiate face-to-face as much as possible. If you can't be in person, the second best thing is something to how we're doing today, a video chat. Now, the third thing is a phone conversation that's pretty standard and normal, and increasingly, more people are negotiating via email. But in most cases, I encourage you to try to take that from email to a phone conversation or to in person. Let email be your last resort. Because we've all sent an email before and someone took it the wrong way. I mean, you could have worded it the best you could have, and this other person is having a bad day, or they read it too quickly and they miss a couple of words, and then they take things out of context. So as much as possible, negotiate in person, face-to-face, or in-person video chat. Then over the phone, last resort, you want to do email, but never negotiate via text. So best practices in terms of body language. When you are negotiating with someone face-to-face, remember the basics: a firm handshake and good eye contact. So firm handshake is always, it's a business standard. It's just one of the fundamental rules of business. Eye contact, look that person in the eye, let them know that you can trust them and that you want to build this relationship. Another thing that you should do is make sure that you're not slouching. There's a really interesting TED Talk by Amy Cuddy. Amy's last name is Cuddy, and she talks about power posing. She also has a new book out, The Power of Presence. So I definitely recommend both the book and the TED Talk, because she talks about how your body language determines how you own the room. And she goes through different poses and shows examples through the video. So I think that's going to be really interesting for you to check out. But be mindful that you're not slouching, because if you're slouching, you're showing them that the other person has more power. And power in negotiation, it's dynamic. It can flow between two parties. But what you want to do is, at the maximum of your capacity, the maximum of your ability, you want to try to increase your confidence in your power poses so that you can confidently ask for the things that you want. One thing that you should try to avoid as much as possible when it comes to body language is being distracted by either a cell phone or a watch or a tablet, checking email. That shows that you're not engaged and you're not as interested in the party as maybe you really are. So you want to eliminate any possibility that you are not showcasing your true interest in reaching an agreement that's a win-win for both parties. We talked about voice inflection. Be mindful of how fast you're speaking or how slow you're speaking and your tone and pitch. This means that you want to try to, as much as possible, listen more than you speak. That can be challenging when you're laying out everything that you want. However, if you prepare in advance the things that are important to you, the things that you want to discuss, and practice saying it out loud, one of the things that I do personally is I'll record myself in advance. And it's hard to listen to the playback, but when I listen to the playback, I'll sometimes say, ugh, I didn't mean to sound like that, or, oh, I should probably slow down, or this part I sound really confident, but that part not so much, so I need to be consistent and sound confident throughout the conversation. So if you record yourself saying out loud the things that you expect in a negotiation and you play it back and you hear yourself, that's one way to practice and rehearse and build those skills where you're more confident in what you're saying, but you also project to the other person that you're confident as well. Now, before I hop into question and answer, keep this in mind. Never enter a negotiation with an attitude of take it or leave it. When you go in saying take it or leave it, that's different from knowing what your bottom line is and knowing, hey, if they're going to pay me $15,000 less than the market rate, I'm not going to accept it. That's different from the take it or leave it attitude of I want all that I want and I will not compromise and I'm not going to give you anything. Negotiation is finding that middle ground and that agreement, okay? So with that, always go in with an attitude of how can I make this a deal for both parties where this is setting the foundation for a long-term relationship and we're going to continue to build on this. So I want the person that I'm negotiating with to say, I enjoy doing business with her and I got a fair deal, she got a fair deal, we can definitely do business again. All right, so let's hop into a couple of questions here. I have a question from Danielle. Danielle says, I accepted a position and quickly realized after the excitement dwindled down that I accepted less than what I should have. It's below the market rate. Is there anything I can do? If so, what? Great question, Danielle. So what I would encourage you to do is go back to that party and negotiate. How do you engage in that conversation? You could start off by saying, I'm so excited about this opportunity. I have no doubt that I'll be able to deliver on, and then talk about the specific points that you're going to be expected to deliver on. And then say, I've done a little bit of research and I've realized that the rate we discussed is well below market rate. What can we do to get closer to the market rate? Now, this isn't combative, but this is a way where you're putting it out there saying, hey, let's make sure that I'm being compensated fairly. I'm going to do a great job. In most cases, that should get the conversation rolling. From that, you want to make sure that you've done your research because you've already made a mistake. So you want to make sure you dot all of your I's and cross all of your T's. This means using all of your online resources to make sure that you have the total compensation data that you need, as well as talking to your network in the industry to make sure that all of the things that you're requesting when you go back to them are things that are standard. Because one thing that you want to avoid is having to come back a second time after you say, oh, I'm not getting paid fairly, I need this. And let's say you work something out and then you come back again and want more. You're probably going to tick them off and they're going to think, well, is this a person I really want to work with? One, they're not prepared. They don't know their value. Two, it seems like they're getting a little greedy now. So make sure that if you're going back in for a second time, that you go in very prepared to discuss all aspects of the compensation package, not just the salary. All right. I have another question here. This question is from Amy, and this is going to be our last question for today because we're right at the end of our time. Amy says, what can I do to negotiate more on a daily basis? I see that my peers are negotiating for special projects, but I haven't done so. Amy, great question. One of the things that I will say is you want to make sure that you're consistently letting your supervisor know what your career aspirations are and what your interests are in helping the company advance its goals. So be really clear internally what the team's goals are, what the division's goals are, and the overall organizational goals. How can your strengths play into that? And when you hear of an exciting opportunity, make sure that you're vocal about it. Don't just assume your supervisor will nominate you for that position. Say, hey, I heard that there's a task force for this and I'm really interested in it. Or if there isn't a special task force, but you want to be considered for special projects, just say, hey, I'm interested in working on special projects, helping the company advance its goals because XYZ, and I think my skills up, and just list out what your skills are that would fit into those overall goals would really lend to helping the company reach its mission. So I hope that helps you, Amy, in terms of putting it out there, letting your supervisor know the special projects that you want to be on. Now, if there comes a case where you're bidding and you have to, compete with other people for the project, be honest with yourself, do an audit of the skills that you have. Look at the other people who could potentially be going up for the same opportunities that you are. Find out where you stack up against them. And if you need additional certifications or trainings, make sure that you do those, even if you have to invest your own personal money, time on the weekends, time in the evenings to gain those additional skills so that you can be competitive when you go in and you put your name in the ring for a promotion or raise or to work on a special project. Hey, we are at the end of our time. Time flies when we're having fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me during your lunch break, during this Wednesday Wisdom Career Strategy session, and this is our series on negotiation. My name is Jacqueline Twillie. If you have any follow-up questions, you can visit my website, jacquelinetwillie.com, send me an email, or shoot a tweet to me. Before I let you go, I want to remind you that you should eliminate excuses and emulate excellence. Be the highest and grandest version of yourself. Have a great day, and I'll see you next week.